Hey guys, tonight we begin with a moment in time that doesn't get enough credit for being absolutely horrifically awful. The year 536 AD. Never heard of it. That's okay. Most people haven't. But ask any climate historian, and they'll tell you this was quite possibly the worst year to be alive. Seriously, if there were ancient Yelp reviews for the 6th century 536, would be flagged for hostile environment and sun not working. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's drifting into history with me around the world. Now dim, the lights maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up bundled in a tunic that smells faintly of mildew and boiled onions, pretty standard for a 6th century peasant. The floor is cold beneath your feet, a compacted patch of dirt you've walked across so many times it's smoother than your cousin's forehead. You step outside, yawning, ready to greet the sun and get the day started. Except there is no sun. The sky instead looks like a badly cleaned window, gray dim and slightly threatening. The sun is up there somewhere, but it's not shining. It's not even trying. It's more like a glow-in-the-dark sticker after 6 years of use, just kind of there existing, but not helping anyone. The eerie gloom doesn't lift. Not today, not tomorrow, not for more than a year. The sun's rays are so weak that it feels like dusk at high noon. Shadows vanish. Crops pause. Flowers give up on blooming. And birds get confused and sleep in. And as for you, you're now stuck in a world where daylight is an elaborate prank. This isn't just fog or mist. It's a strange veil across the sky, thick enough to turn clear noon into twilight, and it covers more than your village. Across the known world, from Ireland to China, people start reporting the same thing. A sun that shines, but doesn't warm, doesn't light, doesn't comfort. It's as if the universe hit the dimmer switch and walked away. In Constantinople, the historian Procopius records the event with barely contained anxiety. He writes, "The sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon during this whole year." Imagine that. A whole year of moody, gray nothing. And remember, this is a world without electric lights, without LED flashlights, or YouTube's cozy fireplace videos. When the sun lets you down, the darkness isn't poetic. It's terrifying. But that's not all. The temperatures plummet. Summer never arrives. Snow falls in China in August. Ireland's records mention the failure of bread, which is medieval shorthand for we're in deep trouble. Crops fail not just from cold, but from confusion. Plants don't know when to sprout, so they just don't. Fields remain eerily quiet, like they're holding their breath. You trudge past your neighbor's field, a muddy expanse where barley once swayed, and see nothing but stunted stalks and half-hearted weeds. Livestock thin out. Chickens stop laying eggs. The village priest is looking particularly twitchy. In towns, people begin whispering about omens. The old woman who reads bones says the spirits are silent, which is somehow more ominous than if they were screaming. Someone blames a nearby mountain. Someone else blames a wandering monk with suspicious eyebrows. Most people, though, quietly begin to panic. What caused this modern science has a few ideas. One leading theory is a volcanic eruption, possibly in Iceland, so massive it hurled sulfur and ash into the stratosphere, forming a sunlight-blocking haze that wrapped around the globe. Tree ring data shows a sudden drop in growth. ice cores revealed trapped particles from massive volcanic fallout. But back then, people didn't have ice cores or volcanologists. They had goats and prayers and really, really bad guesses. Imagine living through this and having no explanation, no news, no weather reports, just your gut telling you something is off, and it's not the stew this time. Now let's get a bit quirkier for a second. You're in a world that genuinely believed the heavens reflected earthly balance. So if the sky turns sickly, that must mean something down here is really messed up. People start to think it's the end of days. Others think it's punishment for sins your neighbor confesses to stealing turnips and immediately builds a personal altar. Meanwhile, the village kids draw what they think the sun looks like because they're starting to forget. Clocks, calendars, forget it. Time feels different when the sun won't cooperate. Days blur together. There's no clear dawn or dusk, just endless dim. People light candles at noon. Midday prayers move earlier or later because no one can tell when noon even is. You start sleeping in, waking up unsure whether it's morning or dinner. Sound familiar? But wait, there's more. The darkness, it turns out, is just the beginning. Soon, the cold sets in. And not just bring a jacket. Cold, this is your soup, freezes in the bowl cold. People wrap themselves in every layer they own and still shiver. Fires burn out faster. Wood becomes precious. You eye your stool and wonder how flammable it really is. And the worst part, you don't know if this is the new forever. Maybe the sun's just broken. Maybe the gods have left. Maybe tomorrow the world stops altogether. At night, you lie in bed, a pile of straw that creaks with every breath, and stare into the pitch black above. No stars, no moon. Just a void that presses in, as if daring you to close your eyes. You think of the fields, the animals, the empty pantries, and you wonder what happens when the stores run dry. Welcome to 536 AD a year, where time lost its light and the world forgot how to grow. And the worst, oh no, dear listener, this is just the beginning. The sun hasn't come back. It's now been weeks, maybe months, since you last saw a real sunrise. You've lost track of time. Everyone has. The fog still hangs thick in the air, not like a morning mist that burns off by noon, but a permanent shroud. A gloopy gray film spread across the heavens, like the gods tried to repaint the sky and gave up halfway through. The village is quieter now. Even the chickens have stopped clucking so much. It's as if the world itself has gone into a sulk. And things are getting bad. Remember those crops? Yeah, they're officially done for. The barley's yellowed and collapsed. The beans never bloomed. The turnips were the size of your thumbnail and tasted like damp clay. People are starting to panic, but medieval panic doesn't look like modern panic. There's no Twitter meltdown or stock market crash. It's more like an uncomfortable silence at the village well. People stop greeting each other. The baker shrinks his loaves. You see fewer smiles and more children chewing on bits of leather for breakfast. The famine begins subtly. First, it's just smaller meals, then skipped meals. Then hunger becomes the daily rhythm. You wake up hungry, spend the day hungrier, and go to bed with your stomach whispering betrayal. By now, people are eating things they shouldn't. Bark. Weeds. Soup made from shoe leather. One man in the next village apparently boiled moss and claimed it tasted like fish. He was either delusional or a culinary pioneer, but no one's judging anymore. Some of the more creative villagers start foraging. You know this because your neighbor's prize goat suddenly disappears and the stew pot smells suspiciously festive the next day. No one says a word. Goat isn't sacred, but neither is theft. Still, people are getting desperate, and desperation has a way of rewriting morality. The cold doesn't help. Normally, you'd be planting new crops or preparing tools, but with no sun, the ground stays hard and frozen. Frost clings to the inside of your house walls like moldy lace. Even your breath feels thicker. You bundle in layers of scratchy wool, hoping friction counts as warmth. You huddle near the hearth, but the firewood pile is shrinking. Every log you burn is a decision between heat and tomorrow. At night, the cold is cruel. It sneaks through cracks in the walls, coils around your ankles, and taps your spine with icy fingers. You start sleeping in shifts. Whoever wakes up coldest stokes the fire. It becomes a nightly ritual, one that no one enjoys but everyone accepts. The room stinks of smoke sweat and boiled roots. You miss the days when it smelled like nothing. But it's not just you. In far-off Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, even emperors are confused. Reports flood in from every corner of the known world: Persia, Egypt, China. In each place, the stories the same: dark skies, bad harvests, freezing temperatures. In China, records say the snow fell in midsummer, ruining rice fields and freezing out silkworms. Imperial scribes are frantically documenting these weird celestial omens because when the sky misbehaves, it's almost always blamed on politics or sin or both. And while nobody's invented meteorology, yet rumors spread like wildfire except more efficiently. Some say it's the wrath of heaven. Others whisper that it's punishment for unchecked sin. One priest delivers a sermon so dramatic that the congregation weeps less from guilt and more from hunger and fear. Then he promptly faints, because guess who skipped breakfast? In Ireland, monks record the failure of bread. That's not just poetic. That's code for famine. The Irish annals mention a failure of bread from the 12th year to the 14th, which for the record is a very polite way of saying 2 years of complete disaster. By now, you're living through the kind of event that future historians will argue about, and you don't even know it. Oh, and the animals, they're suffering too. The livestock are thinning out, ribs, visible milk drying up. The cows low more weakly. Pigs aren't even bothering to grunt. Chickens peck at frozen dirt like it personally offended them. Even your dog has stopped wagging his tail, which feels like an emotional betrayal. You remember one morning, catching your reflection in a frozen puddle. Your face is thinner, your eyes sunken, your cheeks hollow, and yet you still have it better than some. Already you've heard of neighboring villages losing people not to plague, not yet, but to starvation, to exposure, to quiet decisions made when the food runs out and someone offers to share for a price. And now there's talk of movement, entire families abandoning homes and heading south or east or anywhere that might offer warmth. But no one knows where to go. There are no good choices, only less frozen ones. The worst part, there's no end in sight. People begin marking days on walls with charcoal, not to track time, but to cling to some illusion of control. You do the same. One mark for every sunrise, even if the sun never really rises. You find comfort in the rhythm. Scratch, eat, freeze, sleep, repeat. Historians today believe this global dimming came from a volcanic eruption, possibly in Iceland, spitting ash so high it wrapped the earth in a dirty scarf. Others suggest a series of eruptions, or even a comet impact. But back in your village, you don't have ice core data, You have frostbitten fingers and a growing suspicion that the gods are ghosting you. And so, you trudge on. Each day, harder than the last. Each night colder. But still, you wake up. Still, you rise. Still, you hope just a little that tomorrow the sky will clear and the sun will come back. Not like a half-hearted candle, but like a friend who left too long and returns with warmth in their eyes. But not today. Snow in August. That's the kind of sentence that would make a Roman astrologer spill his wine and check the heavens twice. But here you are, middle of summer, or what should be summer, and your village is staring at flakes of snow drifting lazily through the gray sky. A boy reaches out, catches one on his tongue, and looks more confused than delighted. A little girl asks if winter got lost. You don't have an answer. This isn't the normal kind of snow either. It's light but persistent. It falls on ripe fields like a bad omen. Wheat turns to slush. Hay gets damp and moldy before harvest. And you can't help but feel like the world's trying to switch seasons without telling anyone. Historians call this phenomenon a volcanic winter, but you don't know that. You just call it unnatural. The weather's drunk and nobody seems able to cut it off. Everything is out of sync. Chickens start molting early. Trees shed leaves as if confused. Bees disappear. Even the frogs that normally croak non-stop at night have gone silent. It's as if nature herself has unplugged. And the humans, we're trying our best, which isn't saying much. People wrap themselves in every scrap of fabric they own. Scarves are made from old grain sacks. Cloaks from patched-together bits of wool. You layer so many tunics, you start to feel like an onion with self-esteem issues. And yet the cold still bites. You try to start a fire using damp kindling and some very strong language. It sputters to life, but the smoke clings low, refusing to rise. Even fire is behaving oddly these days, as if heat itself has lost its confidence. You joke about it, but your teeth are chattering too loud. And then comes the cold rain. Not a downpour. Just a constant misty drizzle that seeps into bones and spirits. It turns dirt paths into mud traps. Wooden homes begin to reek of rot. Mold blossoms on ceilings like uninvited guests. People start sneezing more, coughing more. The village healer recommends herbs, but the herbs are gone. They didn't survive the last frost. You watch the rain from your door, shoulders hunched, and wonder again what's going on. You're not the only one. In China, imperial records note the same bizarre events: crops failing, snow in summer, a strange yellow haze in the sky. The emperor's advisors suggest sacrifices and temples fill with panicked offerings. In Rome, what's left of it, people are equally baffled. Is it a comet? A curse? Have the gods declared bankruptcy? One Byzantine scholar blames the sun itself, suggesting it was somehow sick. You'd laugh if that didn't feel so true. Historians still argue whether this was the result of one massive volcanic eruption, maybe Iceland's Elja, or Ilopango in El Salvador, or several smaller ones compounding each other. Theories include a comet strike or a meteor crashing into the sea. But back in 536, you don't have geological models. You just have livestock dying of cold and neighbors hoarding onions like they're gold coins. And while we're on the topic of livestock, let's check in on the animals. Again, shall we? Cows have stopped giving milk. Chickens lay one egg a week if you're lucky. Pigs are quieter, less wiggly. They huddle close together for warmth. The dog sleeps under your bed, less out of loyalty, more out of survival instinct. Even the cats are staying indoors, which frankly feels like the surest sign of an apocalypse. Your village gathers more often, now not for festivals or markets, but to swap news and theories. One man suggests digging tunnels and living underground. Another suggests it's the end of days and recommends confessing sins daily just to be safe. You nod thoughtfully while wondering if hoarding that wheel of moldy cheese last week counts as a sin. By now, your dreams are strange. You dream of warmth and sunshine and thick loaves of bread with actual flavor. You dream of swimming of bare feet on sun-baked stones. You dream of color. Everything around you is gray sky dirt food mood. Even your clothes seem to have dulled. It's like living in a badly tuned charcoal sketch. And it's not just the peasants who are noticing. Nobles, priests, and emperors are all reacting differently. Some declare fasts. Others declare feasts, eating the last of their stores in lavish acts of desperation. Some rulers turn to astrologers demanding answers. The stars remain frustratingly ambiguous. The rich, of course, suffer less. They have better cloaks, warmer fires, deeper food reserves. But even they are running out. There's only so much salted meat, dried fruit, and smug confidence to go around. Back in your hut, you count your family's remaining food, a few onions, some stale rye bread, and a bag of dried peas. Enough for 3 more days if you ration carefully. Or one depressing stew, if you throw caution to the wind. And so, you make stew. You boil water, add everything. Stir it with a stick that used to be part of your broom. The smell is earthy, faintly sour, but warm. Everyone eats slowly, chewing thoughtfully, as if pretending it tastes better makes it true. You catch your child licking the bowl. You don't stop them. Outside, the snow has stopped, but the sky remains the same dull gray, unwavering. A neighbor knocks, offers half a turnip in trade for firewood. You accept, not because it's fair, but because you like her. And as you sit by the fire that night, wrapped in your least damp cloak, you whisper a wish not for wealth or glory or even sunshine. Just for one morning, one single morning, where the world feels normal again. That's not too much to ask, is it? You know things are bad, when even the doomsday preachers start sounding nervous. It starts small, just a few mutterings near the village chapel. Someone says the sky looks angry. Another insists it's the work of demons. The old priest doesn't help. He clears his throat during Mass and stares out the door more than at the altar. And then one morning, he breaks. Not in a dramatic thunderclap on the pulpit kind of way. No, it's quieter than that. He simply stops pretending everything is fine. He tells the congregation voice, low and trembling, that we may be witnessing the end times, that the darkness is a sign, that the sun, the giver of life, has turned its face from us. There are gasps, some weeping. One man tries to leave but trips over the pew in his rush. The rest just sit in silence like children who've realized the adults are just as scared. The whispers begin to spread. People start saying prayers more often, longer, louder. They carry charms, hang tokens from door frames. You notice more folks wearing crude wooden crosses or strange braided herbs around their necks. A woman near the river starts offering blessings water words and a hard stare for a slice of bread. You give her a hunk of stale rye and get a blessing that smells suspiciously like fish. It's not just fear of hunger anymore. It's cosmic. People believe something bigger is happening, something divine or diabolical, or both. In larger towns, the situation is no different, just louder. Traveling monks carry tales of cities, where people have taken to sleeping in churches terrified to die outside holy walls. In the countryside, pilgrims wander through villages barefoot, muttering prayers and collecting alms. Some whip themselves, convinced that self-punishment might restore the sun. You offer them a crust of bread and a confused look. They leave a smear of blood on your fence as thanks. In your own village, a group starts building a tower, not a grand one, just a rickety scaffold they call the light's ladder. The idea: if you climb high enough, maybe you'll see where the sun went. Maybe you can talk to it. They get halfway up before the wind takes the top half down. Miraculously, no one's hurt. Or maybe the sun is impressed. Hard to say. One scholar traveling through the area carries a dusty scroll and big ideas. He says this isn't punishment, it's a natural event. He mentions ash in the air and earthquakes far away. But he also wears 2 cloaks and smells like panic, so people mostly ignore him. You, however, listen. You start piecing things together. The haze, the cold, the strange rain. Could it be something physical, like a massive fire, a mountain exploding? But how could one mountain darken the entire sky? You have no maps, no news, just your instincts and a rapidly emptying pantry. But those instincts keep tugging at you. The priest says repent. The monk says fast. The traveler says geology. You say, none of this helps you grow beans. Still, you try everything. You pray. You light a candle in the chapel, watching the flame flicker like it's nervous. You scatter ash across your doorframe just in case. You bury a coin near your turnip patch because an old woman said it might please the earth. It doesn't, but it gives you something to do. And right now, anything that feels like control is precious. Then one evening, something odd happens. Not miraculous, not bright, just different. A faint glow in the western sky. Not blue, not golden, just a slightly less oppressive gray. People gather in the village square staring. Children ask if the sun is coming back. Adults shrug. But something about that moment, however fleeting, feels like a pause in the nightmare. You go home, stomach growling, and try to sleep. You dream of sunlight of wheat swaying in the breeze of bread, so fluffy it defies logic. You wake up with your mouth watering and a deep sadness pressing on your chest. Outside, the sky is back to its usual gloom. And now, the conversations shift from fear to blame. Whispers turn sharp. Someone accuses the new blacksmith of bringing the darkness. He's from another village, after all. A stranger. His wife wears red. She's seen talking to crows. Definitely suspicious. Soon they move out voluntarily, but not exactly peacefully. No one throws stones, but no one shares food either. The message is clear. Trust is fading. It doesn't take long for superstition to overtake reason. Someone sacrifices a chicken on a stone in the forest. Someone else burns a bundle of herbs and says a rhyme they barely remember. Children start drawing suns in the dirt over and over. You see one, with tears in her eyes, smudging the rays with her thumb, like she's trying to remember how it looked. Historians today look back at these behaviors with a mix of sympathy and fascination. They call it crisis religiosity, the human instinct to turn to ritual in times of chaos. But to you, it's just daily life now. A life where the sky's broken, the bread's gone, and your only hope is that anything shifts soon. But the sun doesn't return. Not yet. Instead, the gloom continues. The crops fail again. The cold lingers. And now the village healer is sick. She coughs constantly, eyes glassy. She's the one who knows which herbs to boil, which roots to chew, which wounds to poultice. Without her, people are scared. You offer to help. She nods barely, hands you her basket of tools: a dried mushroom, a crooked blade, a small cloth bag filled with what smells like regret. She mutters something, either a thank you or a warning, and drifts into sleep. You sit beside her and feel the weight of the village shift just slightly onto your shoulders. Outside, the villagers are building a second tower. This one's for watching the sky. No ladders, just a platform elevated. A place to stand and look for hope. You take a turn on it that night, wrapped in your cloak eyes, scanning the endless gray. You don't expect to see anything, but you do it anyway. Because what else is there? If you were an emperor in 536 AD, you might think you had a better shot at surviving all this gloom, hunger, and celestial confusion. After all, you've got palaces, servants, golden dishes, and an army that wears matching tunics. But even emperors can't command the sky. In Constantinople, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, Emperor Justinian is having a truly miserable year. He's been dreaming of glory, reconquering lost Roman lands, rebuilding infrastructure, enforcing law and order. His legacy is supposed to be all marble columns and shimmering mosaics. Instead, it's fog famine and very annoyed bureaucrats. You are not in Justinian's court, of course. You are still a peasant. But word of the emperor's frustration drifts down through trade routes and traveling monks. They say his astrologers are stumped. His generals are grumpy. His scribes are writing everything down in case history wants receipts. You picture him standing on a palace balcony, arms crossed, glaring at the gray sky, like he expects it to apologize. Spoiler, it won't. What's worse, his plans are unraveling. Justinian had recently ordered the reconstruction of Hagia Sophia, the grandest church in Christendom. But the dim skies and freezing temperatures have delayed shipments of stone and timber. Masons complain that the mortar won't dry properly in the damp. Candles must be lit all day, turning the holy site into a smoky labyrinth of unfinished arches and frustrated workers. Taxes still need to be collected. Empire doesn't fund itself after all. But with harvests ruined, many provinces have nothing to give. Some send half-rotted grain, others don't bother sending anything at all. Imperial tax collectors return empty-handed, or worse, don't return at all. A few villages have taken to hiding their populations when the taxmen arrive. It's easy, really. Everyone's inside trying not to freeze. Meanwhile, the markets of Constantinople are grim. Fish is scarce. Bread costs more than a chicken used to. Even the silk trade, once the empire's shimmering crown jewel, falters. No one cares about luxury when their goats are starving. Merchants complain. Nobles grumble. One baker stages a one-man protest by throwing moldy loaves into the Bosphorus. Nobody notices. The fog swallows his revolution whole. Justinian tries to maintain order. He issues decrees. He calls for prayers. He even launches a few symbolic public works, repairing an aqueduct, opening grain stores for the poor. But it's not enough. People are hungry, and fear is catching. In your village far from the palace, the emperor is just a name. But even here, you feel the ripple effects. That caravan that used to pass through once a month with salt cloth and dried figs gone. The traveling monk with Greek scrolls, and that donkey who ate socks, also gone. The world is shrinking. Connections are fraying. Isolation is no longer quaint. It's standard. You begin to realize something important. Even the most powerful humans are helpless when nature decides to throw a tantrum. All the armor scrolls and temple incense in the world can't pierce the sunless sky. One afternoon, an old man from another village arrives. He's missing 3 teeth, wears a hat, made from what looks like a curtain, and claims to have been in Constantinople. The priest gives him a seat near the hearth in exchange for stories. The man tells of empty market soldiers too cold to march, and a noblewoman who lit incense every hour convinced it would summon light. Did it work, someone asks. The old man shrugs. She ran out of incense. His stories spread. You picture the emperor pacing under chandeliers, gnawing his royal fingernails, watching his empire dissolve into smoke and frost. It's oddly comforting. Misery, it turns out, is a great equalizer. Meanwhile, back in your hut, survival is becoming its own kind of ritual. You've stopped waiting for normal. Now, you prepare for each day, like a tiny war gather, wood check on the soup, inspect the roof for leaks, count the dried peas again. The rhythm is relentless, but there's comfort in its predictability. Your child, small, quiet, far too thin, draws pictures in the ash near the hearth. Sons over and over. Some smiling, some crying. You don't ask which ones are true. The village has started rationing food officially now. A council of elders was formed not because anyone wanted to, but because hunger demands organization. People bring what they can spare. Someone discovers a buried cache of dried apples. It's like finding buried treasure, if treasure came in the form of shriveled fruit and faint hope. One elder mentions the emperor again, says he heard Justinian is planning to reconquer Italy. The room erupts in laughter, not because of politics, but because no one can imagine traveling that far for anything, let alone war. You barely have the energy to walk to the well. And yet, Justinian does press forward. Despite the darkness, despite the famine, despite everything, he sends his general Belisarius westward to reclaim lost Roman lands. Some historians will later call it a bold move. Others will call it absurd. But in 536, it's just more noise from a far-off place where people still pretend the world makes sense. What does that mean for you? Well, mostly nothing. Except that someday, when scribes write about this year, they'll write about Justinian's politics, his campaigns, his policies. They won't write about you, about how you shared your last onion with a neighbor, how you watched the fog and whispered for it to break, how you rationed your hope like dried lentils. But that's okay. Because even if history forgets your name, it can't ignore your resilience. You tuck your child into bed, pulling the scratchy blanket up to their chin. They ask if the sun will come back tomorrow. You say maybe. Then you blow out the candle and sit in the quiet. The wind hums through the cracks in the walls. Your stomach growls. Your heart doesn't, because you're still here. You wouldn't expect to hear much from China in 536, not from your cold little village anyway. But if you could somehow peek across the planet, you'd see the same dim sky haunting the Tang territories long before the dynasty even gets rolling. And in those distant provinces, the story is eerily familiar. Crops, dying rivers, freezing skies that sulk more than shine. Imperial records carefully brushed onto long strips of bamboo or fine silk, note yellow mists, freak frosts in summer, and failed harvests stretching across entire regions. The royal astronomers in Luoyang scratch their heads and consult the heavens, but the stars offer no clarification. Just more silence. You'd think an emperor with 1,000 advisors and libraries full of scrolls might have an answer. But the truth is, they're just as confused as your village priest, just fancier about it. Some suggest performing elaborate sky rituals. Others recommend sacrifices adjustments to the calendar or fasting. One official, likely a bit sleep-deprived and desperate, proposes sending a letter to the sun. Nobody knows what address to use. And it's not just politics or religion driving the panic. In a rice-based economy like China's, when the paddies dry up, or worse, freeze, society wobbles. Rice isn't just food. It's money. It's trade. It's stability. When rice yields vanish, everything else follows peasants. Riot markets, crash tax collectors go missing. Entire regions fall into disarray. Sound familiar? Now imagine being a farmer on the Yangtze ankle-deep in mud, staring at paddies that refuse to flood. You poke the soil. Too dry. Too cold. You look to the sky. Still gray. You light incense. Still gray. Your wife asks about dinner. You point at a toad and raise an eyebrow. She does not laugh. Just like in your village, people in China turn to superstition. They blame dragons, hoarding rain ghosts blocking the sun, or imbalances in the five elements. Local shamans grow busy. Temples overflow. You picture a whole village bowing toward the horizon, praying for sunlight, while chickens look on, unimpressed. Meanwhile, the Silk Road, yes, that famous network of trade routes connecting east to west starts fraying. Merchants traveling by camel complain that entire way stations have gone dark. Wells have dried. Bandits now outnumber traders. No one's buying luxury goods. Silk stockpiles rot in wagons. And the great bazaars of the East echo with silence. Back in your own fog-choked village, the name China is maybe something you've heard once in a tavern story about porcelain so thin it sings. But you don't need to know the name to feel the ripple. Trade has slowed. Exotic goods stopped arriving long ago. Salt is scarce. Spices are myths. The old merchant, who used to brag about papery scrolls from far-off cities, now just sharpens knives and avoids eye contact. Still, there's something oddly reassuring about knowing the suffering is global. It's not comforting exactly, but it reminds you that this isn't just personal misfortune. This is planetary. Scholars today debate whether the 536 climate event hit different regions at slightly different times. Some claim the cooling in Asia lagged by a few months. Others say the eruption or eruptions were closer to the northern hemisphere, affecting Europe first. But none of that matters to you. What matters is this. It's cold, it's dark, and no one knows why. You watch your breath curl in the air as you walk past the village square. A boy is carving something into the frost-covered fence, a sun with a sad face and teardrops. His mother scolds him, says not to tempt fate. He shrugs and keeps carving. Inside the communal hall, the elders are arguing again. One wants to send a message to the next village over asking if they've seen sunlight. Another suggests moving south, though no one's sure what south means exactly. No maps, no guides, just a vague sense that it might be warmer. A third elder insists that staying put is best. After all, it's only been a year. You want to scream. A year. That's enough time to grow a beard, bury 2 goats, and memorize every lump in your straw mattress. If one more person says it's only been a year, you'll throw a turnip at them. But instead, you volunteer to carry the message. The next village is 2 days away, maybe 3 if the mud is bad. You pack your things, a hunk of bread, a strip of dried meat, a spare pair of socks, and a bone-handled knife you swore you'd never use. You kiss your child on the head, nod to your neighbor, and set off at dawn, or what passes for dawn these days. The path is eerie. Trees sag under frost. Birds are silent. A deer darts across the trail and vanishes. You move steadily boots, crunching over frozen leaves. At night, you curl under a cloak, listening to the wind whisper secrets you don't want to understand. On the second day, you spot smoke. Not ominous smoke, cooking smoke. The other village still has fires. You limp into their square, face cracked from cold, and hand over the message. An elder reads it aloud. Have you seen the sun? They laugh, not cruelly, just tiredly. Then someone offers you soup, thin, rooty, but warm. And you sit and you eat and you listen as their stories echo yours. Crops failed livestock, dwindling children drawing suns in the mud. In that moment, you realize something simple but profound. We're all just people, fumbling through the same gray world, hoping for light. And maybe that's enough to keep going. By now, you've probably noticed something odd about the air. It doesn't just feel cold, it feels thick, oily, like it clings to your skin. When you take a deep breath, there's a faint metallic tang, like licking an old coin. The smoke from fires doesn't rise properly anymore. It coils low to the ground, creeps through doorways, settles in your lungs. You've stopped wondering if it's healthy. You already know it's not. But what's causing it? No one in your village knows, of course. They blame the usual suspects, curses, sin, maybe a giant somewhere who kicked over a heavenly brazier. But modern scientists think they've found the culprit, and it's not just one event. Welcome to the theory of a world on fire without flames. Historians now suspect that what darkened the sky in 536 wasn't just one volcanic eruption, but possibly several spaced across continents and months. The prime suspect: a volcano in Iceland buried beneath glaciers that may have unleashed a cloud of ash and sulfur so vast it wrapped around the earth like a filthy scarf. But here's where it gets stranger. Some believe it wasn't just Iceland. Other eruptions might have followed in Central America and Indonesia, maybe even in North America. The atmosphere, already bruised, couldn't recover fast enough. Layer after layer of dust and gas blocked sunlight, reflecting it away like a cosmic sunshade. You, of course, don't know about atmospheric sulfur dioxide levels or global stratospheric aerosol optical thickness. You just know your cabbages look like they've been cursed, and your dog sneezes more than usual. Some villagers have started calling the haze sky rot. Others think it's smoke from a massive fire somewhere far away. They imagine a burning forest that stretches to the ends of the earth, feeding the gloom day and night. One child even insists it's dragon breath. You nod. Honestly, it's as good a guess as any. And the effects aren't just visual. There's a strange stillness to everything. Sounds are muffled. Even the birds, when they bother to sing, seem quieter. It's like living in a room where someone turned down the volume of the world. At night, the darkness is a different flavor. Not just absence of light, but something deeper. It feels thick. You can't see your hand in front of your face unless the fire's roaring, and who has the wood for that anymore? Your eyes ache from squinting. Your candles run out faster. Your dreams get darker too. One night, you dream of standing in a vast ash field, the sky cracked open like pottery. Something moves above you. Slow, deliberate watching. You wake up cold, heart pounding, unsure whether it was a nightmare or prophecy. You don't mention it to anyone. Even your animals sense it. The sheep huddle closer than usual. The chickens refuse to leave their coop. Your neighbor's cat has taken to staring at the wall for hours, tail twitching like it knows something you don't. You start wondering if maybe it does. Back in the real world, the old healer, frail but sharp-eyed, starts collecting strange samples. She points to the soot clinging to the side of a jug and mutters, "Not from firewood." She boils water from the well, frowns at the way it clouds. "Sky sickness," she whispers. You ask what that means. She doesn't answer. And yet amidst all this, people keep adapting. They start building windbreaks, fences of woven branches designed to deflect the constant chill. Some experiment with underground storage, burying vegetables deeper in the earth to protect them from sudden frosts. Others learn to dry meat using smoke inside sealed pits. It works, sort of, but nothing makes the sun shine again. At the chapel, the priest delivers his sermons with a hoarseness that didn't used to be there. He coughs mid-prayer, wipes his sleeve, and keeps going. "We are tested," he says, "like iron in the forge." You glance at the blackened sky and wonder if the forge broke. One day, you spot a new face in the village, a woman wrapped in layers of dyed wool, her voice smoky, her eyes sharp. She carries a bundle of scrolls and claims to be a scholar. Not a priest, not a merchant, just someone who records what happens. She asks questions about the sky, the air, your dreams. She sketches the way the mist clings to the trees. You don't trust her, but you're curious, so you talk. She tells you stories from other places, far cities with the same gray gloom, ports where ships never docked, islands where crops failed and villages vanished. The world, she says, is hiding under a blanket of ash. And still, she smiles. People endure, she adds almost like an afterthought. You watch her leave with her notes and her stories. You wonder if anyone will ever read them, if future generations will believe that the sun once dimmed and the air turned to smoke. That bread vanished, hope faded, and still somehow, life kept ticking along. Because that's what it does. It doesn't flourish. It doesn't sparkle. It just continues. Like a stubborn weed in a frozen garden. You return home. Your child is coughing again, but it's soft. Nothing serious. You wrap them in a woolen blanket, share the last of the turnip stew, and light one precious candle. The glow is feeble, but it's something. Outside, the sky hangs low and gray and indifferent. But inside, you hold a tiny circle of light. Something's changed. You don't notice it right away. It's not as though trumpets blare and golden sunlight suddenly bursts through the clouds. No, it's quieter than that. Subtle. Like the way a bruise fades without fanfare, or how a wound stops aching one morning, and you don't even realize it until nightfall. It starts with a shadow, a real one. You're walking past the well bucket in one hand, sore shoulder in the other, when you realize your outline is visible on the frozen ground. Not crisp, not bold, but there. The faintest smudge of darkness cast by your own body. You stop, stare, tilt your head. The shadow shifts. You laugh. It sounds strange, like something you haven't done in a while. A bird nearby flutters upward, startled. Later that day, the village elder confirms it. Sunlight, he says, as if naming a forgotten friend. The sky is still cloudy, still thick with haze, but there's a new quality to it, a pale goldness, a whisper of warmth. No one celebrates. Not yet. It feels too fragile. But something has changed. People linger outdoors a bit longer. Fires burn a little lower. Children, cautious but curious, draw bigger suns in the dirt. Someone even sings while chopping wood off key, wheezy but joyful. It's the first music you've heard in weeks. And then, of course, the snow returns. Briefly. Just enough to remind you not to get cocky. But hope once planted has roots. The healer, somehow still alive, still wise, says the air tastes different. Less metallic, more earthy. She starts collecting wild herbs again. Just a few, mind you. Nothing dramatic, but enough to suggest the soil is softening, that the earth, after months of silence, might finally be listening again. You see it too. Tiny shoots in the dirt near the chapel. Not weeds, not frost-burned survivors, but real green life. You don't know what they are. You don't care. You kneel in the mud and stare like it's a miracle. And maybe it is, because make no mistake, you are still in the middle of the nightmare. Food stores are critically low. People are thinner than ever. Disease still lingers, especially among the old. But now, when people speak of the future, it's not with dread, it's with caution. A planning sort of tone. A what if instead of a what now. Historians will later note that 537 was still a terrible year. Cold, dark, dangerous. But compared to the abyss of 536, it's a half step toward recovery. And that's how survival works. Not in leaps. In stumbles. You begin preparing new fields, even though the soil is still half frozen. You trade a bit of wool for seeds from a neighboring village. No one knows if they'll take, but the gesture matters. It's faith with dirt under its nails. The priest, who spent the past months looking like a human question mark, actually delivers a hopeful sermon. We have endured, he says, voice cracking. We have been tested. There's no fire and brimstone today, just a soft smile and a whispered prayer of thanks. And for once, people don't look away when he meets their eyes. Even the animals seem different. The chickens are louder. The dog barks again at nothing as usual, but still it feels familiar. The sheep are shedding less. You swear you heard a pig snort in its sleep, which is probably meaningless but oddly comforting. You take small walks again, not far, just enough to stretch your legs and breathe in something other than smoke. On one such walk, you find an abandoned beehive. Dead, yes, but not destroyed. That means the bees might come back. And one day, you see a flower. Just one. A stubby yellow bloom barely the size of your thumb. You kneel next to it, fingers hovering. You don't touch it. You just stare wide-eyed, as if afraid to blink. That night you can't sleep. Not because of fear or cold or coughing, but because your mind won't stop spinning. You think about that flower, about shadows, about laughter. You think about next year, a concept that's felt impossible for months. At the council meeting, the elders speak in full sentences again. One suggests replanting barley. Another mentions the need to rebuild the broken fence near the pasture. Someone volunteers to repair the cartwheel. These are small things, but they're the language of normalcy. You still ration food. You still feel hunger. But now, every bite tastes like progress. Every warm cup of broth feels like defiance. Not everything is better. Some neighbors didn't make it. Some left and never came back. The tower they built to watch the sky collapsed in a storm and was never rebuilt. But even its wreckage feels like a monument now, a reminder that people tried, that they believed. You tuck your child into bed that night, as always. But this time, when they ask, will the sun come back tomorrow, you say something different. You say, probably, and you mean it. Let's talk about the people who didn't just ride out the storm in their drafty villages, boiling soup made of regrets and turnips. Some saw the dim sky, felt the biting cold, heard their neighbors whispering about curses, and made a choice, move or die. These were the wanderers, the risk-takers, the desperate. Families packed their lives into carts, if they had carts, or into sacks slung over shoulders. Some went south, chasing rumors of warmth. Others headed for the coasts, hoping the sea might be kinder than the soil. You hear the stories trickle in. A family of 5 left a neighboring village with 2 goats and a prayer. They made it as far as the mountain pass before a blizzard forced them to build a shelter from pine boughs and hope. They survived barely. The goats did not. Another group tried following the old Roman road eastward, thinking maybe the ruins of the empire held secrets. They found nothing but empty forts and foxes who looked mildly annoyed by the intrusion. And then there were the pilgrims, religious or just spiritual. It's hard to tell. They marched barefoot through mud and snow, chanting to the heavens, asking for forgiveness, or a sign, or both. Some reached monasteries, some didn't. Some became stories, passed between villages. Did you hear about the woman who walked 3 days without speaking, and the sky cleared for a moment when she arrived? Probably not true. But when the world is this strange myth grows quickly. From the east, a rumor arrives. In some parts of the world, the skies are less dark. Not clear, not bright, but survivable. Traders from the Mediterranean whisper of places where wheat still grows, where fires burn hotter, where you can walk outside without feeling like the planet is trying to apologize for existing. You entertain the idea of leaving. Pack your belongings, wrap your child in blankets, head south, maybe to Gaul, maybe to Italy, maybe even Egypt, where the Nile still flows and food supposedly grows like weeds. But then you remember, you don't have a cart. You don't even have shoes that can handle mud frost and bandits. And, oh yes, the bandits. With roads emptier and lawmen fewer, the woods grow thick not just with deer, but with opportunists. Men who used to till soil now wait with clubs by crossroads. Not because they're evil, because they're starving. You've heard about whole wagons vanishing, about travelers going missing, which is polite code for being robbed, stripped, and forgotten. So you stay. Most people do. Because as bad as it is to freeze in your own home, it's worse to freeze while lost in the forest, holding your last crust of bread and wondering if that sound was a fox or something less reasonable. But the movement continues. Enough wanderers pass through your village to leave behind maps, crude ones scratched into wood or leather. One shows a path to a valley where the sun reportedly broke through for a full hour. Another shows a coastline where fish are still biting. The problem? None of them agree. The world has become a whisper maze, and still new faces arrive. There's the woman with a walking stick carved with runes who claims she's followed the storm for months, always staying just behind the worst of it. She smells like cedar smoke and stale apples. Offers to trade stories for stew. You give her a bowl and ask what she's learned. She says, it always gets worse before it shifts. Then she falls asleep by your hearth and snores like thunder. Another traveler, young gaunt, with eyes too old for his face, brings news of the sea. The ports are empty, he says. Ships don't want to sail into the fog. He claims to have seen boats vanish swallowed by mist. No storms, no waves. Just gone. You thank him, feed him, and quietly decide never to trust a boat again. But not all news is grim. A tanner from a western village claims to have crafted a cloak so warm it kept his baby alive during the frost. He brings a bolt of the fabric wool mixed with some kind of oily thread from forest plants. You trade a basket of dried beans for enough to make a scarf. It's scratchy, but it works. Some of the travelers bring seeds. You don't know what they'll grow into, if anything. But you plant them, carefully, hopefully. You whisper to them as you bury them in the half-thawed soil, as if your breath could make up for the sun. And through all this, your village begins to change. It becomes a waypoint. You're not the only ones who stayed put. Others come and stay, at least for a while. They add their skills to your mix. A man who knows how to dry fish. A woman who can spot edible fungi from 20 paces. A boy who can sing a song that makes children stop crying. The population shifts. Homes are rebuilt. Fires burn longer. The communal stew pot becomes a constant thing. Always something bubbling. Always someone stirring. And slowly, your village once just a dot on a foggy map becomes a hub. Not a bustling city, not a fortress, but a place with stories, with memory, with new roots. The sky remains dim. The cold lingers. But now you have visitors. You have maps. You have the knowledge that you are not alone in this. And that may be enough. You've seen a lot in the past year. More than you expected. More than anyone should have to in a lifetime. You've watched the sky abandon you, the crops betray you, and the seasons forget how to season. But now something's happening that feels almost revolutionary. People are laughing again. Not often, not loudly, and certainly not about the weather. But it's there. Brief chuckles, smirks traded over communal stew, the kind of snort that slips out when someone makes a joke about goats wearing socks. It's laughter, born not of joy, but of sheer relief that you're still here to hear it. You catch yourself smiling more often. Not big toothy grins, your teeth are still too important to risk cracking on bad stew, but small, quiet smiles. The kind that sneak up when a chicken lays an egg, or when you find a wild onion growing near the stream. It's not just you. The village, your battered, shivering, stubborn village, is beginning to look like itself again. Sort of. The fence around the garden has been rebuilt. Someone patched the chapel roof with old cloaks. Children are playing, albeit carefully, in the thawing mud. You even hear music. A traveler passes through with a lyre strung with twine and bone. His fingers are frostbitten but nimble. He sings old songs, tales of kings and monsters and stars and new ones about surviving the long gray years. People gather to listen. Someone passes around a flask. Someone else passes out from drinking too much of it. You sit on a log warmish from the fire and close your eyes. The music isn't beautiful, but it's alive. And right now, that's all you need. Then something unexpected, a feast. Not a real feast. Let's not get carried away. But someone managed to catch a boar, or at least a large angry pig, and instead of hoarding the meat, they share it. The whole village gathers in the square. Smoke rises from 3 fires. Roots are boiled. Berries are rehydrated. The stew has flavor for the first time in months. You eat slowly, reverently. A child drops a chunk of meat in the dirt and cries. Someone else picks it up, wipes it on their tunic, and hands it back without a word. That's what generosity looks like now. During the feast, an elder stands to speak. No grand declarations. Just a toast to those who didn't make it, and to those who did. Everyone drinks. Even the kids, though theirs is just warm water with a hint of elderflower. The priest offers a quiet prayer. The healer nods approvingly. The sky, still mostly gray, seems a touch lighter tonight. Afterward, people don't rush home. They linger, talk. One man teaches a group of kids how to play a game involving sticks mud and deeply inconsistent rules. Someone else recites a poem about spring that ends in a fart joke. It absolutely kills. That night, your child asks if you think everything will go back to the way it was. You hesitate, because here's the truth: it won't, even if the sun returns, even if the crops grow, even if warmth becomes more than a rumor, nothing will be quite the same. The year 536 carved itself into the world like a scar. The people who live through it are changed. You are changed. You've learned things hard, quiet truths about resilience, about sharing, about the strange comfort of doing nothing together when there's nothing to be done. And you've learned how fragile normalcy is. One bad year, just one, and the whole structure of civilization wobbled like a goat on ice. Trade routes collapsed. Empires blinked. People turned on each other, then leaned on each other sometimes, both in the same afternoon. So no, things won't go back to the way they were. But maybe they don't need to. Maybe they can be better. Not richer, not grander, just more human. More aware that even in the worst, cold warmth can come from each other. The feast becomes an annual thing, a tradition. People call it the first fire, a night to remember when things began to shift. Each year, it grows a bit more extravagant. One year, someone brings honey. Another year, someone brews actual ale. By year 5, there's music dancing and a very competitive onion-throwing contest. The world slowly begins to find its rhythm again. Reports arrive from a far ship sailing, again harvests returning in Sicily, coins being minted in cities that once went silent. The sun still hides some days, but when it shines, it shines. There are birds again. Bees. A man from the mountains even claims to have seen a butterfly. You tear up at the very idea. The scholar with the scrolls returns. She's older now, grayer, but her eyes still sparkle. She brings with her a bound manuscript, the first known record of the dark year compiled from a dozen villages. Your village is in it, your stories, your names. And she says something you've been waiting to hear. You made it matter. It's a quiet triumph, not carved into marble or shouted from towers, but it's real. You return home. The fire is burning. The stew is warm. Your child is taller. The sky outside has cleared just enough for stars. And tonight, for the first time in years, you whisper, maybe tomorrow will be even better. And you believe it. Here's a fun twist. Just when you thought things might be turning around, when the sun starts teasing you with golden streaks, and you've managed to find a rhythm with barely rotten vegetables, something new shows up. It begins with a cough. Nothing dramatic, just a dry little thing in the back of the throat. The kind of noise you'd ignore on any other day. But now, after all you've been through, a single cough sounds like a thunderclap. And then there's another, and another, and suddenly the chapel is half empty. You hear it whispered first at the well. There's something going around. No one says plague. Not yet. That word's too heavy, too soaked in history. But the signs are there. Fever sweats, people going quiet and then staying quiet. The healer calls it the weak wind. She says it settles in the lungs, makes breathing feel like dragging a sack of stones. She prescribes warm broth, damp cloths, silence. But deep down, everyone knows broth can't stop what's coming. Your neighbor's daughter, usually all elbows, and sass doesn't come out to play for 3 days. On the 4th, the priest visits her home and leaves with red eyes. You've survived darkness, cold, hunger. But this is something else, something invisible, something that creeps into your home without knocking. Now, to be clear, this isn't the plague yet, the big one, the bubonic special that's coming in another century or so. But it's one of the early warnings, a trial run, if you will, for the body count to come. Historians still argue whether it was influenza, a respiratory virus, or a regional outbreak exacerbated by famine. But for you, the science is irrelevant. All you know is that your village is quiet again, and not the peaceful, music by the fire kind of quiet, the scary kind. You stop visiting neighbors. The communal stew pot is covered now, each family serving themselves. Children are told not to wander. The chapel doors stay open longer, in case anyone wants to pray from a distance. The priest doesn't shake hands anymore. You wash everything, hands, herbs, linens. The healer boils rags until the hut smells like a damp sheep sauna. She insists on burning certain roots, filling the air with bitter smoke. Keeps the sickness confused, she says. You don't question her logic. Desperate times and all that. Some think it's divine punishment. Others blame a traveling merchant who arrived 2 weeks ago with a cough and a bad attitude. One man says it's because someone unearthed a cursed relic in the northern hills. You suggest maybe the earth just needs a nap. You try to stay positive. Really, you do. You make tea from dried mint. You hum old songs while chopping wood. You tell your child stories of days when the sky was blue and food came in colors other than brownish. But your hands still tremble every time someone coughs. The fever hits your household next, not your child, thankfully, but your cousin, the one who helped build the tower. He tries to brush it off, but by the second night, he's muttering nonsense about snow in his shoes and the sun hiding under the bed. You drape wet cloths across his forehead. Feed him broth in slow sips. Wait. 3 days pass. On the fourth, he opens his eyes and asks for stew. You cry. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Just a few tears into the hem of your sleeve while pretending to stir the pot. Survival has made you practical, but it hasn't made you numb. Not everyone is so lucky. The village loses 4 people that week. 2 old, 1 young one, in between. They're buried at dawn, in silence, with only the priest speaking. The graves are shallow, not for lack of respect, but because the ground is still half frozen. Someone places wildflowers on each one. You wonder where they found them. The sickness doesn't wipe out the village, but it leaves a dent, and with that dent comes another shift, not in the sky, but in the people. Everyone becomes gentler, not mushy, not overly sentimental, just softer. The arguments stop, the blame fades. Neighbors bring each other food, again, even if they drop it 6 feet from the door. A child draws a heart in the frost on someone's window. You catch the healer smiling at it. Even the priest stops talking about punishment and starts talking about grace. You begin to feel a strange kind of strength. Not joy exactly. Not yet. But resilience. You faced hunger, darkness, disease, and you're still here. Thinner, yes. Sadder sometimes, but here. One morning you step outside and the light hits your face in a way it hasn't in over a year. It's warm. Just a little, just enough. You close your eyes and breathe. The air still smells like smoke and mud and worry, but underneath it, there's something else. Possibility. The seasons are confused. You've always known the rhythms of the year, like the back of your calloused hand, when the birds return, when the snow softens, when the bees wake up and act like they invented flowers. But now, the world seems to have misplaced its calendar. It's supposed to be spring, you think. There's more light, sure, and the ice is mostly gone, except in the corners of shadowed hills. But it's not warm. Not really. The earth feels like it's cautiously sniffing the air, trying to decide whether it's safe to unfreeze. You see signs, though. Tiny shoots poking through the dirt. A sparrow hopping through a puddle like it's inspecting real estate. A frog croaking once, then falling silent, as if surprised to be alive. You cling to these signs like treasure. The healer says the ground is soft enough to talk to again. You don't ask what that means, but you do start digging. Slowly, carefully. Your fingers still remember last year's failed plantings how the seeds just sat in the earth like sulking guests who refused to grow. This time you try a different spot, higher ground, better drainage. You mix in ashes from the winter fires and dried manure from a goat who's somehow still alive, probably out of spite. Others join you. The whole village becomes a slow-motion ballet of shovels, baskets, bent backs, and quiet determination. No one expects a miracle. They just want something to sprout. You plant beans, lentils, onions, carrots. Someone trades for barley seeds from a traveler with suspiciously clean boots. A child hides a handful of dried peas in the dirt behind the chapel and refuses to tell anyone where so the sun doesn't get shy. You let them have that one. Meanwhile, the forest starts to stir. You hadn't dared go too deep over the winter, too dangerous, too cold. But now curiosity returns. You follow a trail basket on your arm, looking for anything edible or useful or interesting. You find mushrooms, not the fancy kind, but not the deadly kind either. Some wild garlic. Bark you can boil into a bitter throat-soothing tea. And then you find tracks. Not human. Big. Too big for a deer, too orderly for a boar. You follow them for a while, until they vanish near a shallow stream. You decide not to think about it too much. Whatever it was, it's gone now, hopefully. Back in the village, people begin sharing more stories of things they saw, things they felt, things they dreamed. The scholar with the scrolls is gone again, but her influence remains. A new kind of storytelling has taken hold. Less about God smiting sinners, more about the odd details that make survival worth remembering. One man tells of a night when he heard the stars whisper. Another swears he saw a white crow leading a line of mice out of the village. You add your own tale of the single flower that bloomed in your garden when nothing else did. You don't mention that it never bloomed again. You let it remain a symbol. The priest, less somber these days, begins encouraging these tales. He says every story is a seed, and we need all the planting we can get. It's probably the best sermon he's ever given. And there's laughter again. More of it. Not the nervous we might die kind from earlier in the year. This is gentler, warmer, like the earth itself is exhaling. One evening, as the sun, yes, actual sun, dips below the horizon, the village gathers for a meal. Not a feast, but not a famine either. There's bread, made from barley, that survived in storage, dried fish from a neighbor's clever net traps, a stew with real flavor, and wine, not much. Just enough for everyone to toast with a tiny cup and feel fancy for a moment. Someone proposes a toast to the dirt. May it forgive us for being surprised. You raise your cup. You're still cautious, still tired. But there's something in your chest that wasn't there before. Hope. And it's not just you. News travels slowly, but it travels. A trader says the roads south are clear again. A monk says Rome has seen blue skies. A woman who speaks 5 languages but refuses to name any of them says the markets in Antioch are busy again. You don't know what's true. But you know this: people are talking again, moving again, planning, building. You go to bed that night on a mattress stuffed with fresh straw instead of moldy rags. Your child sleeps beside you, arms splayed like they own the place. You listen to the wind outside and hear, for the first time in ages, nothing ominous. No strange howls, no shutters banging, just the soft rustle of leaves beginning to return. You close your eyes, and when you dream, it's not of darkness, it's of a field, full of color. Spring, if you can even call it that, limps into summer, like a hungover knight dragging his armor behind him. The sun peeks through more often, but with the tentative energy of someone knocking on a door they're not sure they should have opened. Still, the warmth is undeniable. You wake up one morning and don't reach immediately for your cloak. The frost on your boots is gone. Your bones ache a little less. A bird sings an actual melody instead of that pitiful one-note croak you'd gotten used to. And for the first time since the darkness began, the word harvest gets mentioned in a sentence that doesn't end with just kidding. It's early days yet. The beans are stubborn. The carrots look like they've seen some things, but they exist. There are rows of green where last year there was only mud. You kneel beside a patch of onions and feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Pride. The earth is listening again. Still, the ground hasn't entirely forgiven you. The growing season is strange, warmer than expected, but dry. Rain comes in, bursts, then vanishes for weeks. Crops need constant care. Water must be hauled from the well in buckets that suddenly feel smaller than ever. Your arms grow stronger. Your patience does not. In the village, the rhythm returns. People rise with the sun or what passes for it, work their gardens, fix fences, argue about chickens. The healer starts collecting herbs in little woven baskets, humming to herself like an overworked bee. The priest gives up, trying to predict the seasons, and instead just blesses everything once a week, soil seed stew, even the dog. Speaking of stew, it's edible again. Not just won't kill you edible. Tasty. A bit of wild garlic here. A dash of pepper someone swears they got from a passing trader. You savor each bowl like it's a royal banquet. Even your child stops asking if it's that weird root again. One afternoon, you catch the faint scent of smoke, but not the scary kind, the savory kind. Someone's roasting something. Your stomach growls so loudly it startles the chickens. You trace the scent to your neighbor's hut, where a wild hare is sizzling over a fire. They invite you in. You bring bread. No one speaks for a while. There's just chewing, smiling, and soft humming. You'd forgotten how human it feels to eat with others and not wonder if it's the last meal. That night, someone lights a fire in the village square. Just for warmth. Just because. A few people gather. One plays a pipe. Another sings a song with no known lyrics. Children dance. Adults pretend not to watch, then join in. It's not organized. It's not elegant. But it's beautiful. And under the dancing feet and crooked melodies, you feel something stirring. A season within a season. Renewal. Not just survival, but something beyond it. The scholar returns. You almost don't recognize her. She's tanned, now stronger looking. She says she's been traveling collecting stories of the year without sun. Her scroll is thicker, heavier. It smells like ink and ambition. She reads you an excerpt, something about resilience in the face of atmospheric betrayal. You don't know what that means, but you nod politely and offer her soup. She thanks you and says, your village wasn't the worst off. You raise an eyebrow. She tells you of places that didn't make it, entire hamlets swallowed by mud river towns, abandoned when the fish vanished, mountain settlements that starved waiting for spring. She says some places are already being reclaimed by forests. The trees always win, she adds with a shrug. It's not exactly comforting, but it does make you grateful. You're still here. That counts for something. Later she sketches your garden, asks your child what they've learned. They reply, how to tell if a mushroom is lying. She writes that down verbatim. You beam with quiet parental pride. As summer deepens, so does the sense of forward motion. More travelers pass through. Some stay. One offers to teach the children how to read not Latin, but a simplified version of the local dialect. She draws letters in the dirt with a stick. They look like strange little worms. Your child picks it up fast. You try fumble and stick to your hoe. A craftsman sets up a stall to trade knives pots, and the most glorious thing you've seen in months, new boots. Real leather. Stitched. Shiny. You trade an entire basket of dried beans for a pair and immediately regret nothing. The priest, now well fed and slightly smug, announces that next month they'll celebrate the festival of the first sun. There'll be music stew games involving turnips and something he calls sun-shaped bread. You agree to help bake, though your idea of sun-shaped mostly involves squashing dough into vaguely round blobs. As the festival approaches, your village begins to hum, not with fear or dread, but with anticipation. Banners are sewn from dyed scraps. A stage is built from old planks. Someone paints a smiling sun on the chapel wall. It's terrible. It looks like a melon with teeth. Everyone loves it. And one evening, you realize something you're looking forward to tomorrow. Not with fear. Not with caution. Just looking forward. You hadn't felt that in a long, long time. The day of the festival of the first sun arrives, and the village is electric, with an energy you haven't felt in, well, possibly ever. It's not chaotic. It's not noisy. But there's a certain sparkle in the air, like everyone agreed to pretend just for one day that the world isn't still a little broken. You wake to the smell of baking bread. Actual bread. With yeast and crust, and a touch of honey that someone miraculously bartered for. The loaves are shaped into rough suns, some with smiling faces, some with what appear to be angry eyebrows, some that just look like lopsided potatoes, but no one cares. They're warm and soft and delicious. The square is already buzzing by the time you arrive. Children dart between stalls. The new reading teacher has set up a game where they match letters to drawings. S is for stew, C is for cough, T is for turnip again. The children giggle and argue and learn without realizing it. The priest, wearing robes so yellow they look like he fought a beehive and lost, opens the festival with a short speech. Something about survival, about grace, about the light within us. Everyone claps politely. Then he unveils the sun-shaped effigy, a giant round disc made of hay and dyed cloth with sticks for rays. It's terrifying and perfect. Music starts. Someone strums a lyre. Another bangs on a pot. A boy with a voice like a sleepy crow starts singing, and somehow it works. The melody is catchy. People clap along. The song becomes an anthem of sorts. Part lullaby, part rallying cry, part inside joke. You help at the food table. Stew bread, roasted roots, dried fruit, and something someone insists is a pie. It's not, but it's sweet, and that's close enough. You ladle bowls smile at faces you've watched age through frost and famine, and take a moment to marvel at the line forming. A line. For food. Not because it's scarce, but because there's enough. At noon, the games begin. There's turnip tossing naturally, a relay race involving buckets of water and slippery stones, a contest to see who can name the most types of edible fungi without vomiting. Your child enters the mushroom game with suspicious confidence. You cheer. A new contest emerges spontaneously, sunbread sculpture. People carve their loaves into shapes, animals, buildings, increasingly abstract concepts of warmth. One man presents a lump with 3 holes and claims it's last winter's regret. He wins second place. As the sun reaches its peak, weak hazy, but undeniably present, everyone gathers to burn the hay effigy. It's not religious, not really, just symbolic. They carry it to a stone ring, beyond the square, lay it down gently, and light it with a torch dipped in bear fat. The flames roar up fast. The heat pushes back the lingering chill. Smoke curls into the sky, dark, but no longer ominous. The village watches in silence. Some hold hands, some whisper prayers. Some just stare mouths open, like they can't quite believe they've lived to see something burn that isn't a warning. And in that moment, something shifts. You feel it in your chest. A click, like the gears of the world are turning again. The priest finally breaks the silence. He raises a cup and says, "We've been cold. We've been hungry. We've been afraid. But we were never alone." It's not dramatic, not tearful, just true. The rest of the day passes in a blur of laughter and music and the delicious ache of full bellies. As evening falls, people begin lighting candles not out of necessity, but out of celebration. Tiny flames line windowsills. They flicker gently against the dimming sky. Your child falls asleep on your lap, drooling slightly and holding a crumpled drawing of a sun with sunglasses and arms. You stroke their hair, still marveling that you both made it this far. Later, you carry them home under a sky streaked with lavender and gray. The stars faint but visible twinkle like distant applause. You tuck them into bed, slip off your boots, and sit for a moment in the doorway. It's quiet, but not the old, suffocating quiet of 536. This is the soft silence of peace, of enoughness. And when you finally crawl into bed, body sore, but spirit full, you whisper the words that have become your nightly ritual. We're still here. And that more than anything feels like victory. The days grow longer. Not dramatically. The sun still takes its sweet time climbing the sky and disappears faster than it should. But the change is steady, measurable. Hope, it turns out, has a very particular shade of gold, and it's draped across your fields, now thin and wavering but present. The crops respond. Those beans you planted with half a prayer, they're actually beaning. The carrots are crooked but fat. The barley sways in the breeze like it's rehearsing for some agricultural ballet. You walk among the rows and catch yourself humming. It's not a conscious song, just something soft and tuneless, rising up from a part of you that forgot how to be content. The village hums with the same quiet joy. Repairs that were once desperate are now ambitious. A group of teens decides to rebuild the watchtower, not because they expect more catastrophe, but because they want a better view of the stars. Someone finds old wine barrels in a collapsed storage hut and converts them into rain catchers. Another family paints their door bright blue because why not? You don't question these decisions. You celebrate them. There's a new word whispered around the village now, future, no longer spoken with a grimace or a shrug, but with curiosity, with possibility. You hear someone say, "Next year we should try squash." Someone else dreams of a trade caravan to the coast. The healer talks about teaching her skills to an apprentice. Even the priest jokes about planting a vineyard, though no one trusts him near grapes after last festival's wine experiment. Your own plans begin to stretch further ahead. You think about building a better roof, about teaching your child to read more than just symbols, about planting fruit trees, about carving a bench to sit on when you're too old to till the soil, but still stubborn enough to supervise. You think about joy, not in short stolen bursts, but in seasons. And then comes the news. Travelers from the east bring stories of cities stirring back to life. Constantinople, once cloaked in the same shroud as the rest of the world, is breathing again. The emperor's court is reorganizing. Trade routes are reopening. Scholars are writing again. One even produced a map, a real one, charting how the sky changed, where the shadows fell deepest, and how the earth might one day recover. The scholar who visits your village carries a copy. It's beautiful. Ink and parchment weathered at the edges with little golden flecks meant to show where the sun returned first. Your village is not on it, of course, but that doesn't bother you. You've learned that the most important places are often the quietest. Still, the map inspires something. A group of villagers begins organizing a trade expedition. They want to journey south, nothing too wild, just far enough to barter seeds, spices, cloth, maybe news. You're tempted to join, but your hands are too full this year. You donate a bundle of dried herbs and a hand-carved spoon instead. They return weeks later, sunburnt, but beaming. With them come cinnamon stories and a new kind of bean that smells like hope when you roast it. They say it's from Ethiopia, but no one really knows. Doesn't matter. It tastes like morning. More travelers follow. A merchant with ink-stained fingers who trades calligraphy lessons for dried fruit. A wandering healer who insists on listening to your heartbeat before giving advice. A young woman who claims to be a map maker, but mostly just draws animals in the margins. Your village becomes a place of exchange, not just goods, but ideas. Someone builds a kiln. Someone else tries making soap. It fails spectacularly and explodes in bubbles, but everyone smells great for a week. The air, once thick with despair, now carries the scent of wood smoke herbs and the faint tang of citrus from a precious bartered lemon. And the sky. It's not fully back to normal. There are still odd days, sudden fogs, strange hues at sunset. But more often than not, it's just sky. Blue. Deep. Endless. One night, you sit on the half-finished watchtower with your child legs dangling over the edge. The stars are out. Real stars. Twinkling like gossiping lanterns. Your child points and says, "That one looks like a goat." You smile. It probably is. They lean against your shoulder. Do you think the sky got tired? You consider it. Maybe. Maybe it just needed a break. Like we did. Silence stretches between you, comfortable and vast. Then in a small voice, "I'm glad we waited for it." You don't say anything. You just wrap your arm around their shoulders and watch the stars breathe again. You wake one morning to a sound you haven't heard in nearly 2 years. Rain. But not the angry kind that lashes the ground into mud and panic. This is different. Soft, steady, rhythmic. A whisper against the roof, like the world is exhaling. You lie in bed and listen to it for a long time. Your eyes open your body, warm under layers of wool and hope. When you step outside, the village is washed in silver. Puddles mirror the clouds. Leaves shine. The air smells like wet earth and promises. Children splash with joyful defiance, pretending their bare feet are boats. No one stops them. It feels like the kind of moment that should be remembered. The fields drink deeply. The barley stands taller by noon. You see worms, those wriggly, unglamorous, proof-of-life critters in the garden beds. The soil once a hostile slab of regret is now loose, rich, full of potential. You plunge your hands into it and feel it cling like a handshake from nature itself. At the well, people linger just to talk. Not in hushed tones, not sharing fears or strategies for survival, but sharing stories, jokes, the occasional ridiculous rumor. Someone claims to have seen a rainbow shaped like a pig. Another says a bird spoke Latin to him in a dream. A third swears she spotted a fish climbing a tree. You laugh. Everyone laughs. It's absurd, and it's wonderful. The priest who has embraced his new identity as part spiritual guide and part event planner organizes a rain dance. It's not traditional. It involves more clapping than twirling and a suspicious number of goat-related chants. But it ends with someone slipping in the mud and taking 3 others down with them. Everyone cheers. It becomes an annual tradition on the spot. The scholar returns, of course. How could she resist? She brings with her a new manuscript on the Year of Ash and the Dawn Beyond. It includes a section dedicated to your village. Your name is there. So is your child's drawing of the sun with sunglasses. You're both honored and slightly embarrassed, but mostly honored. She also brings seeds, not just the practical kind, but strange ones. Purple beans, fuzzy squash, a type of tomato that supposedly glows faintly at night. It doesn't, but it tastes amazing. The village decides to plant them all just in case. One family constructs a greenhouse of sorts, using old glass-bent wood and pure optimism. It wobbles in the wind, but holds. Inside, tiny sprouts begin to thrive in the protected warmth. And then because, of course, someone builds a sundial. It's crooked, it's wildly inaccurate, but it's beautiful, made of stone and brass and surrounded by flowers. A child, when asked what time it is, points to the dial and says, "Probably happy o'clock." You all agree. Trade increases. You now recognize certain faces that pass through town: the potter with the chipped tooth, the woman with embroidered boots, the grizzled man who only ever asks for onions. They bring news of weddings, festivals, new roads being carved from old stone. One trader tells you that scholars in the East are calling it a climatic anomaly. He says, the sun dimmed. Volcanic ash, they think. Maybe more than one eruption. He shrugs. The sky sneezed. The world caught a cold. It's oddly comforting to know that what you lived through has a name. That it wasn't madness or magic, just nature flexing her terrifying muscles. But names don't change the memories. You still remember the silence of 536, the hunger, the endless gray. You still remember counting breaths during fevers, trading shoes for turnips, wondering if the sun was a myth. You just don't live there anymore. You've moved forward one muddy, stubborn step at a time. Your home is different now. There's an extra window built by a neighbor who owed you a favor. The walls are painted with symbols, some sacred, some silly, all meaningful. A new rug, woven by your child, and their friends, covers the coldest part of the floor. It's lumpy. It's loud. It's perfect. You host a gathering one evening, a simple meal, bread stewberries and the last of the summer cheese. People bring instruments, stories, gifts. One hands you a tiny figurine carved from bone. It's shaped like a sun with tiny arms and legs. For protection, they say. Or just for laughs. That night you sit by the fire, full and sleepy, listening to the crackle of logs and the gentle rhythm of rain against the roof. Outside, the stars begin to emerge. Not all at once, not in a rush, but they come slowly, like shy guests returning to a long-abandoned party. You look at your child. They're older now, taller. Their eyes reflect the flames, and something more: wisdom, maybe. Or mischief. Probably both. They whisper, "We should build a library." You smile. Why? So people remember. So no one forgets how weird it got. You nod. That sounds about right. And you make a note right then to find some empty scrolls. Because it's time to write it down, not just what happened, but how you survived it. Together. The library begins as a joke. You clear out the goat shed. No, really. The goats have long since moved to a newer pen with better fencing after that unfortunate incident involving a turnip thief and a very judgmental billy goat, and the old shed just sits there, leaning slightly, smelling of hay and old arguments. You sweep it out, patch the roof, hang a sign carved with uneven letters, "The Memory Hut." People laugh, but then they start bringing things. A copy of the scholar's manuscript, a bundle of leaflets from a traveling monk who tried to teach philosophy with drawings of cats, a child's alphabet board stained with soup, and your favorite, a folded scroll filled with songs from the festival, complete with illustrations of questionable instruments. You build shelves, not elegant ones, just planks nailed into place, some of them still bearing the faint hoof marks of their previous goat tenants. You line them with the new books, scrolls, bundles of tied parchment. You even start cataloging them loosely. Scary Sky Things sits between poems and potatoes and herbs that probably won't kill you. Soon people stop calling it a joke. They call it the library, and they come. To read, to write, to sit in the quiet space where memories now live. One elder begins dictating her story to a teenager who can write. A young couple draws a map of every foraging path they explored during the worst days. Someone begins a dictionary of all the strange slang your village developed while the sun was gone. Yes, cloudbutt is included. It becomes more than memory. It becomes healing. The act of writing down what you went through, of naming it, shaping it, placing it on a shelf, makes it smaller, manageable, no less real, but now contained in something besides your chest. The healer donates her notes, crinkled pages of plant sketches, symptoms, half-formed prayers. She adds a line at the bottom of each, "Didn't die." That becomes a sort of village motto. Even the priest contributes. He offers sermons he never gave, ones that felt too heavy during the worst times. Now they feel right. One is titled, "Even God Took a Nap," and you like that one best. And you write too. At first, just bits. A memory of the first snowfall. A recipe you improvised when nothing edible remained. The story of how your cousin once mistook a scarecrow for a saint and prayed to it for 2 days. Then more. You write about fear. About how your child once asked if the moon was sick too. About the night you almost gave up but didn't. About the stew that made you cry, not from flavor, but because it was enough. You don't know if anyone will read it all, but that's not the point. You write so you don't forget. The library becomes a hub, not a loud one, not a bustling, scroll-flying everywhere one. Just steady, warm, a place where people come to remember and to hope. And then one day, a traveler arrives, not a trader or monk or musician, a scribe. They wear layers of linen, carry ink pots like treasures, and have a laugh like creaking parchment. They read for hours, scribbling notes. Then they ask, "May I copy some of this?" Everyone stares, then nods. And just like that, your little memory hut begins to spread beyond your village. Copies of your scrolls appear in nearby towns. Your map of foraging routes is pinned in a market stall 3 days south. The list of mushrooms that won't kill you becomes oddly popular. The children's sun drawing turns up in a scholar's study in the East, where it's analyzed as folk iconography of climate resilience. You snort, but you're proud. Because in this tiny goat-scented space, your story joined a larger one. And now you notice something new, curiosity. People want to know more. Not just what happened, but why. What caused the darkened skies? What do the scholars say? Were there signs before it began? Rumors swirl of a mountain far away, one that erupted in smoke and fire just before the year turned. Of dust that traveled across oceans. Of other dark years in the distant past. Historians still argue whether the eruption came from Iceland, El Salvador, or somewhere even more remote. But the idea that the sky could break from a mountain you'll never see both fascinates and terrifies you. So you write that down too, because knowledge like onions grows best when shared, and occasionally makes people cry. And the library grows. Shelves are added. The roof is reinforced. Someone paints a sun over the door, not smiling, not frowning, just watching. Beneath it, a plaque carved with the words, "We remember." The youngest children now ask, "What was it like before the dark year?" And the elders answer with laughter, with stories with scrolls passed hand to hand. And someday, maybe one of those children will write the next chapter. Not about surviving, but about thriving. The library changes the village, but not just by what's in it. It changes how people see themselves. Once you were just survivors, scraping through ash-gray days, enduring. Now, you're something else, rememberers, carriers of stories, keepers of strange truths, and quiet victories. The village becomes known for it not for trade or wealth or power, but for memory, which, as it turns out, is its own kind of strength. People begin to visit specifically to read, to contribute. A woman from the northern hills arrives with tales of the orange snow, a bizarre phenomenon no one believes until she pulls out a tiny cloth stained with rust-colored flakes. A pair of twins from the coast bring a scroll filled with sea legends and a drawing of a fish with 3 eyes. You suspect artistic liberties were taken. These aren't just guests, they're echoes of a world still stitching itself back together. You start holding gatherings in the square under lanterns and stars. You read aloud, sometimes poetry, sometimes fragments of old diaries, sometimes a child's joke scribbled in dirt and copied onto parchment because it made everyone laugh for a week. The priest says, words are warmth. You believe him. And you notice something you hadn't expected. The youth are listening. Not just politely, actively. They memorize stories, ask questions, add their own details. One begins composing songs. Another sketches maps that are mostly accurate but feature whimsical beasts in case explorers get lonely. Your child starts drawing timelines on the wall of your home, tracking events by stew recipes. It makes sense. Then comes a request a teacher. Not the letter game kind. A real one. Someone to explain why the sun vanished, how the earth could fall into shadow, what this all means in the long arc of time. The priest nominates the scholar. The scholar nominates you. You laugh for 20 full seconds, but you accept. You start small. Weekly gatherings, talks about soil stars, trade winds, legends. You tell them what you know, what you've heard, what you've guessed. You end each session with the same sentence. And what do you think? Because if there's one thing you've learned, it's that no one knows everything. But everyone knows something. The sessions become wildly popular. Children bring chairs. Adults sneak in under the pretense of escorting the little ones. You find yourself using metaphors involving stew goats and bread more often than is academically recommended. But people understand. And they ask questions that spark actual debates. Could it happen again? Did other parts of the world suffer more? What if the sun wanted a break? And most poignantly, are we ready if it comes back? You pause on that one. Not because the answer is complicated, but because it's not. You say, we weren't ready the first time, but we're still here. That silence afterward, that's not fear. That's respect. The library expands again, this time, with a room just for questions. Scrolls with unfinished thoughts, blank pages with prompts. What did you feel when the sky changed? What do you want your great-grandchildren to know? Draw what hope looked like. Some of the answers are silly, some are profound, all are saved. One child writes, hope looked like mom making jokes when her hands were shaking. You fold that one and tuck it in your pocket, because, same. The outside world is calling more loudly now. News from distant regions, empires rebuilding cities, lighting up roads repaved. Ships returning to routes, abandoned for years. Even whispers of strange new lands across the sea. The scholar shows you a map that curves where it used to stretch flat. The world is bigger than you thought. And yet you don't want to leave, not because of fear, but because this place, this tiny village once cloaked in soot and silence is alive. Not perfect, but rooted. You plant trees, not for food this time, for shade, for beauty. You carve names into their bark of the lost, the brave, the absurd. One is labeled Sir Turnip in honor of a goat who escaped daily and returned only for stew. And still the seasons turn. Fall arrives gently, leaves shift from green to gold. The first fire of the season is lit not for survival, but for coziness. People roast things just because. You catch someone knitting socks with actual color. The healer gifts you a jar of herbal optimism, which turns out to be jam. It tastes like summer and forgiveness. You walk the edge of the village one evening, the wind wrapping around you like an old friend. You see the fields, the rebuilt homes, the crooked sundial. You hear laughter music, someone shouting about soup. And you realize this is no longer the village that survived the dark year. This is the one that grew from it. You pause, hand on the low fence near your garden. There's a single flower, still blooming stubbornly bright. You whisper, we're still here. And the wind, for once, whispers back. Winter returns, but not the monster from before, not the devourer of sun and color and hope. This time, it's familiar. A gruff old friend stomping back into town with icy boots grumbling about firewood and slippery steps. You meet it at the door with a raised eyebrow and a properly insulated tunic. You're ready. The crops are in storage. The firewood stacked neatly even. The pantry boasts dried beans, cured meats, onions, and more root vegetables than any one person could ever love. And best of all, there's jam. So much jam. Strawberry, if the label is to be believed. Optimism, if the flavor is anything to go by. The village prepares with quiet competence. Roofs are double-checked. Chimneys cleaned. Blankets mended. The children have outgrown their old cloaks, so a sewing circle forms to create new ones. Someone adds decorative stitching suns, stars even one goat wearing a crown. The festival of the first frost is revived, though this time, with better snacks and fewer accidental fires. There's music, games, a dramatic reading from the library's most unintentionally hilarious scroll, The Day the Pickle Barrel Froze. Laughter rolls like thunder, friendly, warm, shared. And beneath it all, ease. You'd forgotten what a peaceful winter could feel like. Your days follow a cozy rhythm. You wake, stretch, check the fire. Your child stumbles out of bed, hair resembling a startled hedgehog, and immediately asks for porridge. You oblige. Later, you help patch the roof of the memory hut. You teach a lesson about volcanic gases using a loaf of bread and some very confused analogies. You receive applause. In the evenings, you gather with neighbors. Sometimes it's for meals. Sometimes it's to listen to someone recite from memory a poem they wrote during the darkest weeks about fear, yes, but also about goats. There's always a goat somehow. One cold night, the wind howls louder than usual. For a brief moment, a ripple of old fear stirs in your chest. But it passes, because the walls are sturdy now. The hearth is glowing, and upstairs your child is snoring like a tiny dragon. So you sip your tea. Let the wind yell. You've heard worse. You dream often now, not of survival, but of what's next. New crops, better roads, maybe even a bridge over the muddy creek that eats shoes. The children dream bigger maps of faraway lands, machines that grind grain, faster shoes that tie themselves. You're skeptical. The scholar proposes something wild, sending copies of your village scrolls to the capital. The world should know how you endured, she says, how you rebuilt. You hesitate. It's one thing to share your stories here among people who know what turnip soup meant during the worst week. It's another to have scholars dissecting your diary, debating the metaphor of Gray Stew Tuesdays. But in the end, you say yes, because the world should remember. Not just the ash, but the ember. Not just the hunger, but the humor. The song made from scratchy throats. The stew that saved a spirit. The child who asked if the sky was taking a nap, and the village that waited for it to wake. You write a new scroll for the shipment. Title: The Year the Sky Forgot, and the People Who Didn't. You seal it with a piece of ribbon once used to tie herbs. It smells faintly of thyme and triumph. Another visitor arrives, a young man with wide eyes and ink-stained fingers. He's collecting oral histories, stories passed down that never made it to parchment. You invite him in. Offer stew. Watch him write until his hand cramps. Before he leaves, he asks if it happens again. Do you think people will be ready? You consider it, not if they forget. He nods, writes it down. You suspect it'll end up misquoted on a statue somewhere, but hey, close enough. One morning, frost paints the window in elegant spirals. Your child breathes against the glass to draw suns in the mist. Outside, smoke curls from chimneys like quiet music. A neighbor walks by humming. The goats wear little knitted vests. You don't ask, you just accept. You step outside, breath blooming in the air, and look up. The sky is clear, blue, bright. You blink, squint, smile. The sun isn't just back, it's confident. And you realize so are you. You survived the year no one saw coming. The year historians will write about, scholars will argue over doomsday, preachers will exaggerate, and poets will romanticize. But you lived it. You planted seeds in ash, laughed when there was nothing funny, found light in each other when the sky offered none. So as the snow begins to fall, not too heavy, just enough to dust the rooftops like powdered sugar, you breathe in the cold air and feel something deep in your bones. Not just warmth, but peace. Spring doesn't arrive all at once, it tiptoes. A thawed puddle here, a brave sprout there, a breeze that doesn't sting. It's not dramatic, but you notice. So does the village. And like clockwork, so do the goats who immediately attempt to escape. Again. You laugh when you see them. It feels good. The snow vanishes in patches. Earth reappears dark and rich. Children play again, rolling in mud, like it's a luxury substance, which after the last 2 years, it sort of is. The village's energy shifts from endure to expand. You're building again. Literally and metaphorically. A new granary, a small footbridge, a proper stage for the now monthly story nights. Someone paints a mural on the chapel wall, a sun rising from a book flanked by goats. Of course, and the biggest project of all, a school. The building is small, just 3 rooms, but it has windows and shelves and a bell above the door that someone forged from a melted down pan and a broken horseshoe. It rings like optimism. You're asked to give the first lesson. You pace in front of nervous children and even more nervous adults pretending they're just there for logistics, then begin with what feels right. We used to think survival was the goal. Now we know it's just the beginning. You tell them about the dark days, yes, but more importantly, you tell them about the laughter that followed, the jam, the songs, the people who didn't give up even when the sky did. You end with a simple truth. The sun will disappear again. Maybe not like before, but in some way. That's what the world does. And when it does, what matters is how we show up for each other. The bell rings again, this time by a child tugging the rope with glee. Everyone claps, class dismissed. That night, you sit in your garden. The first green shoots have arrived. You don't rush them. You know now patience feeds more than soil. You take out your journal, the one you started in those silent gray days. It's nearly full. You flip to the back. Add one last line we remembered, and then you close it. Not because the story is over, but because it's someone else's turn to tell the next chapter. And now, as the story fades and the world of 536 tucks itself quietly back into the folds of time, you feel your breath begin to slow. Let it. Let your body melt gently into stillness, as if the frost has lifted from your muscles and the warmth of a long-awaited spring is blooming in your chest. You're safe now. The fire is low, but steady. The air is cool, but kind. And the silence that wraps around you isn't empty. It's full of memory, of survival, of peace. Listen to the distant echoes of stories told under starlight. Hear the soft rustle of parchment in the memory hut, the giggle of a child chasing a goat in the sun, the whisper of a page turning on a quiet morning. Feel the weight of the past settle gently beside you, not as a burden, but as proof that you made it here. And now, you can let it all rest. The year 536 is behind you. You've felt the cold. You've wandered the dark. You've planted seeds in ash and laughed in spite of it all. You've remembered. You've rebuilt. You've watched the sky come back. So now, let yourself drift. Dim the lights in your mind. Let the stars blink softly above your dreams. Let your breath slow, like a candle flickering low. And sleep, knowing that even when the world goes dark, light always finds its way home.